How agents are structured, the legal framework behind the brokerage. As we continue Chapter 6, we now move from how compensation is paid to how agents are structured within the brokerage. Understanding employment structure is critical because it directly impacts how compensation is handled, who can be paid, and where liability falls. This section builds on Section 6.1. Once we understand that compensation must flow through the broker and only to licensed individuals, the next step is understanding how those individuals are classified and structured within the brokerage. In Arizona, most real estate agents operate as independent contractors, not employees. However, this classification does not eliminate broker responsibility. It simply defines the relationship for tax and operational purposes. Under AAC R4281103, the broker remains responsible for supervision regardless of how the agent is classified. Natural person versus entity licensing. Who holds the license? Arizona law distinguishes between a natural person, an individual human being, and a licensed entity, such as an LLC or corporation. Key distinctions include: a natural person holds an individual real estate license. An entity must be properly licensed if it is acting as a brokerage. Compensation must still comply with licensing and broker control requirements. For example, an agent in Scottsdale operates as Jane Doe Homes, LLC. While the agent may receive payment through that entity for tax purposes, the real estate license itself is issued to the individual, Jane Doe, not the LLC, unless the entity is separately licensed as a brokerage. A common misunderstanding occurs when agents believe forming an LLC allows them to operate independently of the broker. This is incorrect. The license and the authority to conduct real estate activity remains tied to the individual and their employing broker. The key takeaway: business structure does not override licensing requirements. Independent contractor agreements. Defining the relationship. Most brokerages in Arizona use independent contractor agreements, ICAs, to define the relationship between the broker and the agent. These agreements outline commission splits and payment structure, duties and responsibilities of the agent-broker supervision requirements, office policies and compliance expectations, procedures for disputes and termination. For example, a brokerage in Gilbert may have an ICA that requires all transactions to be submitted within 72 hours, compliance with advertising rules, adherence to transaction management systems, participation in required training. While the ICA defines the business relationship, it does not override Arizona law. Even if an ICA allows certain practices, those practices must still comply with ARS paragraph 32-2155 and AAC R4281103. A critical point: the ICA is a risk management tool, not a substitute for compliance. Commission disputes and risk, where problems arise. Commission disputes are one of the most common issues in real estate brokerages. These disputes can arise between agents within the same brokerage, agents from different brokerages, agents and clients. Common causes of disputes include unclear commission agreements, disagreements over procuring cause, failure to document referral agreements, conflicting terms between contracts and agreements. For example, two agents in Phoenix both claim to have been the procuring cause of a transaction. Without clear documentation and broker involvement, this dispute may escalate into arbitration or litigation. Another example involves a mismatch between the buyer-broker agreement and the seller compensation addendum. If compensation terms are inconsistent, disputes are almost inevitable. Under ARS, paragraph 44-101-7, Statute of Frauds, agreements for compensation must be in writing to be enforceable. Failure to properly document compensation terms can result in loss of commission rights. This is where broker supervision becomes critical. The broker must ensure all agreements are clear and consistent, compensation terms are properly documented, disputes are handled according to policy and law, broker liability and payment errors, the final responsibility. Even with strong systems and agreements in place, errors can occur in compensation. When they do, the broker is ultimately responsible. Common payment errors include overpayment or underpayment of commissions, payment to the wrong party, payment to an unlicensed or inactive individual, failure to follow agreed-upon commission splits. For example, a brokerage in Mesa accidentally pays a commission to an agent whose license had become inactive prior to closing. Even if the error was unintentional, it is still a violation. Another example involves paying a commission directly to an agent's LLC without proper structure or documentation. This creates both compliance and accounting issues. Under ARS Paragraph 32-2155 and ARS Paragraph 32-2153, these errors can result in disciplinary action against the broker. A key principle: intent does not eliminate liability. Whether the error is accidental or intentional, the broker is responsible. This reinforces the importance of accurate record keeping, clear compensation agreements, active supervision of payments, verification of license status before disbursement, bringing it all together. Employment structure and payment rules define how a brokerage operates on a daily basis. They determine who gets paid, how they get paid, and what happens when something goes wrong. This section reinforces several critical principles. Licenses belong to individuals, not business structures. Independent contractor agreements define, but do not replace, legal obligations. Commission disputes arise from lack of clarity and documentation. Brokers are responsible for all payment-related errors. As we move into the next section, we will examine final audit certification and compliance review, bringing together everything learned throughout this course. Online discussion. What is the difference between a natural person and an entity in real estate licensing? Answer: a natural person is an individual license holder, while an entity must be separately licensed if acting as a brokerage. Why are independent contractor agreements important? Answer: they define the relationship, responsibilities, and compensation structure between the broker and agent. What is a common cause of commission disputes? Answer: lack of clear, written agreements and inconsistent documentation of compensation terms.